Okay, so this video is a little different from my first few, obviously because you're actually hearing someone talk instead of just random words appearing on the screen. I felt that it was time to stop being anxious and worried about it and just make a voiceover. Besides, I think that this project kind of deserves it. I might not get a lot of chances to make new videos considering the days and months ahead may be very full. Anyway, on with the Monster Yoshi. Monster Yoshi was an idea that came to me late one night when I was considering all the strange characters in the Mario games. Yes, these are the things I ponder late at night. So I was thinking about how Yoshi looks like he could be a dinosaur, so I pulled out a notebook and made a quick sketch. My goal was to make him more realistic and terrifying. I ended up with something closer to a scaly dog than monster, but I love him all the same. Now, I tried to include all the elements that make Yoshi Yoshi, but makes him more threatening. So, obviously here, I gave his tongue barbs, and he has the spikes down his head, like usual, but now he has plates on his back, which are the replacement of his shell, because I didn't want to have a shell on there, because it didn't look very frightening or intimidating, or at least I couldn't conceive how it would. So yeah, now he has lovely claws, and he has the T-Rex hands, and obviously I had to keep the original color palette. That's just, I had to make sure that, it's Yoshi, I guess. And I had so much fun drawing that curly, long tongue that he's got on there. And yes, I did think when I first drew this on here that it looked like watermelon colors. I guess it kind of is. Now, I'm not exactly sure what I was doing when I was coloring him in. I'm not sure if that's like a good way to do it or even a decent way to do it, but it's definitely how I do it. It's how my brain understands that, hey, this thing's getting colored in, and you're making sure that all the edges are where they need to be and all that stuff. I don't really like using the fill tools or anything like that. I guess I'm just kind of weird. Then here, obviously, I was adding some of the red back into the green, so that way it kind of looks like it blends into the color. That way it doesn't just magically change to red at the top. I kind of had a habit of doing that with old artwork, at least old hand artwork, but didn't really like it as much because of that. And I also kind of didn't know what I was doing with the shading. I was doing a lot of experimenting to make things work, and believe it or not, for the cream color on his tummy, I actually used a shade of like lavender or something to make it look darker. And then for red, I usually use some kind of like pinky purple color. What I like most about this, I think, is that I gave him snake fangs. I don't know when that idea came to me or why I decided it would be cool, but I did it, and then I loved it. It's not something you usually see as dinosaur teeth, so it kind of, I guess, sets him apart from being a dinosaur. That way he's not like full-on dinosaur. It's still something else that's weird and strange. I think, actually no, now that I'm thinking about it, I think the reason I did the snake teeth was because I was thinking about how snakes can unhinge their jaws and swallow things that are just way bigger than their head, and Yoshi does that with that crazy tongue of his, so I think that's where the snake fang idea came from. And then obviously here I'm adding the saliva. I just like drawing saliva on animals with their tongues sticking out. It's just kind of how I like to do it, because they would have saliva in there, and also it kind of looks cool, it's fun to do. And here I definitely started working on some of the more minuscule details. I usually try a couple things before I pick a solution, and this spray tool I found was what I landed on for doing the smaller scales. And then what shade I outline scales in depends on where it is on my reptile's body. usually. Sometimes I'll outline them with a light color, and sometimes I'll outline them with a darker color. It just depends on where it is. But for most of this Yoshi, the scales that I did draw on here, they were in the darker parts of his body, so the more shady parts, so I did the darker outline. Now, I know that, you don't really have to draw every single scale to make a completed project, but for some reason it's always just been a thing that I like to do. I think I do it partly because it adds some realism to it, because, reptiles and things have scales, but I think I also do it because it's very calming for my brain while I'm trying to make these videos that sometimes I manage to stress myself out about. Now, thanks to some quick editing, I managed to cut out a lot of the time that this video takes, because the scales were almost a third of the Yoshi making process. And I let it play here again because you can kind of see me adding highlights and shading to each of the scales. I don't like drawing all the scales and then leaving them flat. I give them highlights and shadows and all that stuff where it should be needed. If you could actually see me right now, I'm making all kinds of weird hand gestures because I talk with my hands. But in between the scales, I jump around. I do other details for other parts of the creature, either because I need a break from doing scales and I finally got tired of them, or just because I saw something and I knew I could fix it quick, and then I go to it and then I'm done. But by the time I hit the tail with those scales, I knew that I was nearly done, first of all, drawing scales, but second of all, with the project itself. And that usually gets me super excited. Sometimes I need to actually stop, put it down, save, and then jump up and down and run around crazy for a little bit to calm myself back down. Anyway, that's the finished project. Here he is. And that's it. I'm gonna sign off. Adios.